This is one of those weird kind of products that has many features packed into as small a footprint as possible that adds just the right amount of usability at the right cost. The GR40 DAC tube preamp and headphone amplifier with Bluetooth and tone control has exactly the same footprint and design language as the Fosi Audio's V3 stereo amp and Q6 DAC. So if you are planning to build a system around the V3 stereo amp, for example, this makes an excellent addition in, at the very least, its aesthetics. When unboxing the GR40 for the first time, some assembly is required. The thermionic valves are safely packed away in small cartons. Where they slot into the amplifier are two orange decorative rings. I've tried removing these, but it doesn't look good. Not only are the edges around the holes not finished as well as the orange rings, but screwing these on the first time in the factory has left scratches. I'm not sure if they are supposed to be removed, but I guess Fosi Audio at one point may have had the idea to offer black alternatives like they do with some volume control knobs. Also, unfortunately, the orange decorative rings do not perfectly match the orange of the knob. In principle, I would take off some marks here, but practically combining all parts, including the top mirror finish on the valves, their deep inner orange glow, and the reflective concave design of the rings, it's not really that noticeable and generally plays well with the design as a whole. On the front of the GR40 is a 3.5mm headphone out, bass and tone controls, which are finally in the correct orientation, so thank you Fosi Audio for listening to the feedback here. And of course the Fosi Orange mode/volume control knob/button. To turn it on, simply hold down this knob for about 3 seconds until the input light turns on. At this point, the valves should start glowing orange, but audio will not play for about 15 seconds until the valves have warmed up. Shortly pressing the knob will cycle between USB, optical, coaxial, and Bluetooth inputs. To turn it off, just hold down the knob for about 3 seconds until the input light turns off, and release. This is the only part of the GR40's usability that behaves a little odd, as the device will not fully turn off until you let go of the knob, and of course, holding down the knob too shortly, for example for 2 seconds, will instead change the input mode. It takes a little getting used to, it's not super intuitive, but when I started using it for the first time, I did actually change input mode once or twice instead of turning it off. The back of the GR40 has a 12-volt power input, Bluetooth input, USB input, coaxial input, and RCA outputs. Inside the GR40, there doesn't appear to be any op-amps that can be rolled for the DAC stage. I used the GR40 in USB mode as a DAC/amp for headphones and as a DAC preamp for speakers. As a headphone DAC amp combo, I found nothing to complain about. It doesn't appear to impart any specific or measurable tonal qualities of its own, so the valves are only adding their tasteful distortions and not imparting any significant tonal flavor, which is about just as well since the equipped tone correction does an excellent job of adding just as much bass or treble as you'd ever need. I measured a Sennheiser HD650 with tone controls set to their maximum and minimum settings. The bass control on average can swing up and down by about 10 decibels, but sub-bass has the greatest change up to 15 decibels. There isn't too much bleed into the mid and upper bass, with the effect petering out by around 400 to 500 Hz, but of course that also does depend on the headphone. The treble tone control affects a wider frequency range, clearly going down into the mid-range around 2 kHz. At most, the treble can go up or down by around 7 decibels, which for most people and headphones should be plenty. While it is by no means a powerhouse, it has enough juice to run some planar headphones to good listening volume, although they are definitely not driven to their full potential. As a DAC and preamp for loudspeakers, I was very happy with the general sound, which was just about as clear and punchy as I was getting with the Q6 DAC. However, the tone controls on the GR40, I feel, are much more suited to my bookshelf speakers than the SK01, which is much better suited for headphones. On the flip side, if like me you own an active subwoofer in your 2.1 system, for example, you may prefer to use something like the Fosi Audio Q6, in which case you may not need tone controls for extra bass. If you're going to build a desktop or living room speaker system around your amplifier, for example the Fosi Audio V3 stereo amp, I can recommend the GR40, especially if you have multiple audio sources or you want the fewest external components on your desktop with the maximum functionality for stereo speakers and headphones. The GR40 gives you a ton of flexibility when building around a simple stereo system, as you get a headphone out, tone controls, Bluetooth, some added valve flavor, and of course multiple input options. If however you are already building a 2.1 system around the V3 stereo amp and Q6 DAC, for example, the GR40 is not the ideal partner. In that case, you might want the Fosi Audio P3 instead, which adds tone controls, valves, and Bluetooth functionality, as it has the RCA inputs but drops the USB coaxial and optical inputs. And finally, it is moderately well suited to those looking for a simple and flexible headphone amp and DAC combo which is ready for future expansion. That's it for now. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.